Jeremy Corbyn is right that inequality has become a mainstream issue. The best evidence for this is opinion polls, which show it rising and rising in importance, and then peaking with I, Daniel Blake, the movie, but then coming off again with the June 2017 general election. So it's a mainstream because in the opinion polls people say this really matters to them. But on top of that, you have world leaders saying it's the most important issue. Barack Obama said it's the most important issue. The Premier of China says it's the most important issue. The Pope says it's the most important issue. Christine Lagarde, head of the IMF, said inequality is the most important issue. The businessmen who meet at Davos have said it's the most important issue. So it's very hard to find anybody who doesn't say it's important. What has happened recently is a huge surge of interest and recognition that we cannot carry on like this. And that is quite new. And it's taken the Conservative Party on the back foot. They really don't like talking about inequality. They don't want to talk about it. They're kind of forced to. And Jeremy Corbyn simply led with it. He mentioned it in every single speech he gave before he became leader. And rather than it becoming something that debated and people got bored of him saying it actually became more and more important. People are not stupid. They realise that these gaps between us are the things that's making life difficult in this country. Most recently, anti-inequality politics has risen, partly because events are now viewed through an inequality lens. So the fire at Grenfell was immediately viewed as an issue about inequality. Now, it did happen to be in the right part of Kensington for that story to work out that way. But 2 years later, that wouldn't have been the focus of the story. The moral sentiment in the country has changed, so that people now see things as wrong, which they had been taught to accept as inevitable until very recently. This has happened before in British history. Perhaps the most best-known example that people may know is the play In Inspector Calls, which was about the change in moral sentiment in the 1930s, and about a very rich family that allowed one of their servants to die to kill herself because they didn't care. Now that play is all about how the times are changing. You can no longer be like that anymore. So we've gone through this before. What's interesting now is that we are only just at the start of it. If you look at previous periods of recognising inequality to be a problem, they take decades and decades, and in those decades and decades, inequality tends to fall. It always begins with a recognition that this is now a problem. It has gone too far. It is not justifiable. 2008 was crucial. Before 2008, you had bankers in London shown on TV buying a bottle of champagne for £30,000, admittedly with a diamond worth £10,000 in the bottom, but that's still £20,000 just for a bottle of champagne. And we celebrated them as the magic money makers who were making Britain great again. That was 2005, 2006. The crash ended that. But then the inability of the British elite to get living standards back up, even to what they were before the crash, let alone to what they would have been had there been no crash, made people realise that something was wrong. It hadn't become better again. They tried to blame the crash on things like government spending, not on the behaviour of people with a lot of money, but it was ultimately the bankers. And amongst the bankers, it was the highest paid bankers who caused this enormous problem in the world. And it was because of their greed to try and make as much money as quickly as they could. And as you slowly begin to realise that, as people tell you, oh, it's the immigrants, and then you realise it isn't the immigrants, as people tell you it's Skypers, and eventually you realise it isn't Skypers, eventually work out it is the greed of people in a very unequal society. So the crash begins in the United States, which had the highest inequality in the rich world. And where fuels it the most in Europe? Where's Northern Rock? It's us in the UK, right? The most unequal country in Europe. We were the masters of the universe when it came to crashing the economy, because we had the highest concentration of the greediest people.